Good afternoon, colleagues. I think we've had an exciting weekend with our load shedding, so hopefully you've brought your best energy and your full selves to the session. The session today is not going to be a lengthy one, but it's going to be a very important one, especially for those of you that are primary investigators, you are researchers, or you are supervising your researchers that are dealing with a lot of personal information. By means of introduction, for those of you that may not know me, my name is Jerusha. I'm with the Division for Information Governance. We have two deputy information officers under the PIA and POPIA at this university. I am one of them, and my colleague Gerald Toy, who's not on this call, he is the other one. And so the POPIA, a lot of us have learned about the Protection for Personal Information Act, and it's sort of at this stage almost like flogging a dead horse, but not quite, because we seem to have little surprises that keep popping up for us. One of the requirements is where personal information is processed, that there be an impact assessment done. So today we are going to just focus on this particular aspect and the resource tool that Stellenbosch University has available to you as an internal stakeholder, not only for research purposes, but you can also use it within your environment. So if you are a member of the PASS environment and you are also processing personal information, you may also use this tool. So my favorite part is legislation. I have a legal and compliance background, and before we hear a collective groan, this is the only section that will be referenced for us today, and it comes out of the POPIA, and Section 4B talks about a personal information impact assessment, which is done to ensure that adequate measures and standards exist in order to comply with the conditions for the lawful processing of personal information. In sessions gone by, we have talked about the conditions that apply for lawful processing, as well as some justifications in law. So you may reference those or have a look on our website if you need further information on that. Now, the beauty of this piece of legislation and the section that I've just referenced is that's it. The information regulator has not yet given us further information on these impact assessments. However, we've had a look at European legislation, which references a data privacy impact assessment, and we've had a look at our personal information in terms of the POPIA, and thus we've come up with a tool that will assist you today. I'm referencing our web page. This is Information Governance's web page. Please do have a look at the web page. There are a lot of useful resources that are going to assist you. We have flyers for researchers. We have, flyers for those of you that are lecturing, and as well as a flyer that talks about personal information. And so we do not expect you to remember these details out of your heads. We do have these reference tools, and one of the main reference tools is the Usaf Code of Conduct. It does, however, span over 200 pages, so please be warned. However, it is arranged per topic, and you should be able to find relevant advice that you need, as well as being able to contact our officers to assist you if you have a query that we have not dealt with in terms of those reference guides. So please do have a look. I will also be sending these slides on to Whitney and asking her to kindly distribute after the session so that you have it on hand for those of you that are unfamiliar or new to the work that the Division for Information Governance does. Right, now onto the tool. If you go onto the Division for Information Governance's web page, Under Tools, it will tell you that you can conduct your own privacy impact self-assessment. So you will be routed to our Jira service desk, which looks very similar to the IT service desk. Please do not log your query with them. They will not be able to help you. So use the Jira service desk and please click on Privacy Impact Self-Assessment. For those of you that are in the call that are perhaps research assistants or PAs and are assisting the primary researcher, you will be able to raise a request on their behalf. So you can see from the screenshot that I've used here, I'm raising this on behalf of myself. I haven't raised it on behalf of anyone else. And then if it is a research project that you are assessing that requires institutional permission from Stellenbosch University, you can just click on the button that says, I wish to self-assess a research project that requires institutional permission from Stellenbosch University. If you are working with another research partner within South Africa, and you do not require institutional permission, but you still wish to assess the project, please click on the last button and you will still be able to assess the project. It will still give you an output and will still render advice to you. If you are within the PASS environment and you are wishing to assess what is going on, your collection of information, or perhaps how you are sending out information to internal stakeholders, this is still a worthy exercise for you. And so you're requested to click on the first button. So as you can see, for our purposes today, I've clicked on the middle button, and this is the button that most of the researchers at Stellenbosch University will use when they are assessing their project or their study or their research. And there is a drop-down menu. Please do be warned, I don't think IT has updated all of the centers and all of the divisions. You might need to put your faculty information rather than your specific center. We are working on them to update the list. This list was created prior to COVID, and so a lot of the centers and the divisions may not be all encompassing, but the faculty should specifically be named. Now, where it says briefly describe the purpose of your research, oftentimes we just request the researcher to put in a summary of their study or their project and add the title. This makes it easier for them and for us when we are tracing if a privacy impact assessment has been conducted and if there is an outcome. And the reason why I say it makes it easier for the researcher to trace is because once the outcome is achieved, they will be able to upload that to Infonetica in order for their ethics to be processed. Okay, so again, it's asking me if I'm the principal investigator. If you are the PA or you are the research assistant and you are merely assisting the primary investigator, you can just say no, and it will have a block that asks for their details. Very important, all you have to do is fill in their details. You can put the title in the front, so if it's professor or doctor, or Mr. or Miss or MX, you can put that in, and then please separate it with just a comma and the correct email address, their @Sun email address, so that the outcome can go to their @Sun email address. This tool currently is only available for our internal stakeholders, and that is why we are quite strict with that requirement. If you go through the exercise, and although it's not a painful exercise, it will not send to an external address and you will need to redo it again. We have several divisions of personal information within the assessment. Like I said, we do not expect for you to remember each and every type of personal information that could be present. So we've subdivided it, which means you go to this drop-down box and you simply click on what is applicable. And as you can see, under personally identifiable information, there are very specific information types. So please bear this in mind if you are working with a company or another juristic entity. The Protection of Personal Information Act also applies to third-party entities. So you would need to fill that information in if it is being collected as part of your research. The last type you can see is potentially personal identifiable information. This one tends to confuse people a little bit, especially if they are wanting to anonymize at the end of their research. But if at the point of collection you are collecting the person's identifiers, please still put it in. It will be up to the researcher themselves to ensure that during the processing of personal information that the de-identification does take place and that the information cannot be traced back to the participant. Under special personal information, that is a category within South African law, and it is a specific category under the Protection of Personal Information Act. The short question that you would need to ask yourself is, do I really need to collect this type of information? And I noticed that there are some of our Tygerberg colleagues on the call, and you can have a chuckle to yourself, because I would assume that within your various fields, it would be necessary for you to have this type of information. But if it is not necessary for you to process special personal information or any other type of personal information, then it should be left out. That is the principle of minimality, and it is one of the 8 conditions in terms of the POPIA. So it doesn't mean you cannot process that personal information. It just means you need to take special care and ensure that your protection mechanisms, that your security mechanisms are up to date. So you can see I've done a little example here for you, where I've just selected some types of personal information from the scroll down button. Now, what would happen if I typed in something incorrectly? If perhaps I put in something that I shouldn't, just click on the X and deselect it. Okay, once you are ready, you can click on the Create button, and the system will automatically send you a result. So this is showing from the system side, so the back end, or when you log into the service desk, it will say hello and whoever you are, and it would give you your assessment result. Now, the reason that I chose a high risk sort of assessment is because I want to assure you that just because something is high risk does not mean that the project cannot continue. It does not mean that the research cannot be done. Again, I must reiterate that the point of this is to ensure that there are active controls in place to reduce the risk of a breach occurring, to reduce the risk of information being collected where it should not be collected. We have a full facilitated privacy impact assessment that the division does, and we do this for sort of the higher risk projects as well as our overseas projects. I will be talking about that a little bit later in the slides, but for now I wanted you to see that if you've done this assessment and you perhaps feel that your project is not as secure as it should be, and you're not sure who to ask, that you should please refer to us. So you will see within the note that is generated from the system, it refers you back to the web page and to the tools. On the web page are our contact details as well. So this example is from the system. Remember, I said the system generates an automatic email, which means you don't have to log back into the system to download the result, you can simply receive this on your @ email address, and you can use this result to upload onto the Infonetica system, where they ask you if you have conducted a privacy impact self-assessment. You can just add it to the box required on Infonetica. And then with this, you can view your request at any time. And again, just that note for those of you that are unfamiliar with Division for Information Governance and some of the documents that we have available for you. So on to the next most important question, and one that is asked quite a bit. Now that I have my result, what do I do with this information? And the first thing that you can do is take a deep breath and absorb what you are processing and why. The second thing that you need to do is ask yourself the question, is this processing going to remain the same for the life cycle of the information? If the answer is no, and you do believe that there will be further processing required at a later stage, you will need to ensure that you are processing not only in line with POPIA, but also in line with ethical requirements. So take stock of what you are doing with the information, i.e., how long am I meant to store this information for? So the POPIA gives us guidelines and says that we should not store for longer than is necessary to give effect to the personal information that has been collected. So I'm collecting it, and I'm collecting it for a study, and the study is being published, and it's being published in 2023. However, journals might require us to keep that information for a bit longer. The question we need to ask ourselves as researchers is, where is that de-identified information being held? Or if it is identified information, where is it being held? Who has access to it? And what other controls are in place? So as you can see, a privacy impact self-assessment is truly helping you navigate the POPIA in terms of thinking of the privacy of your data subject, in terms of thinking of the security of the information that has been collected. Another question that is very common that I get a lot from researchers that are dealing with European partners is, can I use this tool when a European researcher asks for an assessment based on the GDPR or vice versa? And the short answer is yes, tentatively, but there are some concerns. Our privacy legislation, our South African legislation, is not a mere copy and paste of the GDPR. As I said in the beginning of this presentation, juristic persons also have privacy rights under the POPIA. The same is not true for the GDPR. Secondly, the subdivision of personal information called special personal information only exists under the POPIA. It does not exist under the GDPR. Having said that, European partners often ask very similar questions related to the processing, related to the security of the information, and a privacy impact self-assessment, even to get yourself ready for the assessment that they may ask, would be useful. But please do not do this privacy impact self-assessment and provide it to a European partner as proof of total compliance, because this is not auditing actually your processes. It is merely a self-assessment. And I would request that you rather engage with the division a bit further so that we ensure that the information is processed correctly according to South African law, and that we can give assurances to your overseas partner that we are not collecting more personal information than we should. Another question that has come up, and this question usually comes up from PhD students that are doing phased research, and it could be that their research starts off initially with an invitational survey and thereafter goes into more comprehensive interviews or focus groups. In that instance, I would suggest that they do use the PISA, but that they assess the information in the phases that they are going to publish in. So if they're starting with a survey, assess the personal information, assess the controls separately to perhaps having a one-on-one interview or even doing something in a working group or a workshop. So yes, it can be used in terms of phased research. It is up to the researcher, and it would be to their benefit to do so and to also title in terms of their summary that this would be phase 1 of the research or phase 2 of the research. A lot of times we would look at legislation and think this is just a tick box exercise, but there are other benefits to conducting a privacy impact self-assessment. And the first one is that the researcher themselves identifies any privacy risk or any processing problem. It is a means to promote accountability and the privacy rights of a data subject, and it can improve the processing, and it can assist in mitigating a breach. For example, if you did not know that you were required to have certain security controls in place, this would assist you to ensure that you have done your checks to make sure that your security is in fact in place. Sometimes we can get very complicated matters dealing with several partners, or we are collaborating with different universities, not all in South Africa or not all in Europe. Please do request assistance from us if you require further information of how another country is processing that personal information or where they are storing that information. On the JIRA service desk, so that was in the beginning slides, I referred you to the Division for Information Governance's webpage. If you click on the link, even for the PISA tool, it refers you to the division's service desk on JIRA. There is a specific icon to request to speak with a privacy official, and we will make sure that we consult with you and we discuss the best options for your study or for your project. Workshops like these can be held at any time, and I would encourage those of you that are on the call that are lecturers, perhaps not for this year, but for next year, to engage with the division to ensure that your students also have access to this information and to ensure that they receive the requested training and the requisite training. Thank you so much.